Hey guys, it's Bree and Alan here from the Hunter and the Hippie podcast.
And on today's episode, we caught up a little bit just about my trip to Europe. I was in Europe for a little under a month. Talked a little bit about that, but then we really get deep into recovery and how important it is to, if you're going to work hard, recover hard. So tune in. It's a really exciting episode, and yeah, that's it.
And a big thank you to all of our listeners, you guys, for tuning in, staying with us. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Feel free to share with anyone who you think might be interested and leave a review. Also, a thank you to Brianna Cote for doing all of our photography, for marketing materials, as well as Allison Band, AllYson, for our intro and outro music. And without further ado, enjoy the show.
Good morning, Bree.
Good morning, Alan. Welcome back.
How's it going? Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. Had an amazing time. It's been a whirlwind since I've been back though. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I got back a week ago.
Okay.
So for everyone that doesn't know, I got back a week ago. I was on a trip to Europe. I was there for almost a month. It was really amazing.
Your college graduation trip?
Yes, my college
backpacking through Europe.
It's more like my midlife crisis trip.
Wait, midlife? Oh.
Midlife opportunity trip. I saw something. I was getting on a plane, and there was a one of the like banners. It was like a bank ad. I took a picture of it. I wouldn't be able to find it quick enough, but I think it said, "It's not a midlife crisis, it's a midlife opportunity."
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So I'm back, but I came back and immediately the next day, I had a concert to go to. A friend was flying in from out of town. Had a concert to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Jet lag kicked my ass. Being over there a month, I was fully adjusted to the time. So like getting back here, it was like, it was like 2:30 in the morning. The first night at 2:30 in the morning, I was wide awake doing laundry, cleaning my place. It was just insane. And then I had the concert to go to, and then my niece graduated college.
Okay.
Then she had a party, so I flew to Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
I went to that. And, they wanted a party. So it's been a whirlwind of a week. And then finally I got home, and like 2 nights ago, I finally got like a really good night's sleep.
What's a good night's sleep for you?
I was sleeping like 2 hours, Brie, like a night. Like it was nuts. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was bad. I was sleeping so one night I slept like an hour and a half, and I was just like a zombie. Like a zombie just walking around. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was bad. It was really bad. And then the other night I slept like 9 hours straight.
Okay.
And it felt amazing. And so, getting back into the groove, getting back into a routine. That's the hardest thing when you're away, is like you're trying to build a routine when you're gone for that long.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you're like, oh, I got to find a new place to live and check out of this place and move along. And, I got to have my coffee in the morning, and apparently Europeans don't like to wake up early.
Yeah.
When I was in Estonia, and I couldn't get a cup of coffee before like 8:30.
Yeah.
And I'm up at 6. Like it doesn't matter. So I was just like, what the fuck? So I essentially got forced into the doctor's orders.
Oh, good.
I was excited to tell you that. I was like, yeah, Bree's going to be happy. I had to drink water for the first like hour and a half of my morning.
Yeah, it will help. It probably helped for you to get on your circadian rhythm in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it was a good trip. It's great to be back. It definitely expanded and opened my eyes to a lot of things in life, and um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this year. I was really excited about this year before. Now I'm even more excited.
Yeah,
I have some
what from the trip prompted that increased excitement?
one of the big things like the trip really showed me is how capable I am,
Mm.
and like I now believe it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's powerful when you really believe in yourself and you believe like, hey, what you're doing. So right, like climbing all the mountains. I have 57 14ers left to climb this year,
Yeah.
which is not a small task.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep getting more snow.
Yeah.
So like my window of opportunity continues to decrease
Yeah.
for this. Uh, and that's okay, right? That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But it just showed me that I'm capable of accomplishing really anything, and doing it alone, and right, knowing that I'm not alone, and meeting new friends and new people, and how much people are actually willing to help,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be from afar or close, meeting new friends. Yeah, it was really eye opening in that aspect, and also there were some life lessons in there about life being perfect. That's like the one big thing I got from the trip,
Mm-hmm.
is that life is perfect,
Mm-hmm.
all of it, and like the hard moments, because there was lots of crying too. There was right, like I'm emotional, and there was lots of missing the thought of home
Mm.
and my people, and then it was funny that that next morning when I got home, that next morning I was sitting having coffee, and I was like, it's good to be home, but I could also be in Europe still.
Hey, this is the thing where when you're away, you want to be
Yeah,
home. When you're home, you want to be
right.
away. Come
Yeah,
on.
but it wasn't like, it
Yeah.
wasn't even right. It wasn't like I want to be home or I want to be in Europe. It was
Yeah.
just I could be either,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that was like a really cool feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because being home felt no different than being where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was amazing. And there's tons of stories, and we're going to talk about all those stories because there's some really fucking funny stories that
Yeah.
we'll eventually get to on the podcast. But I want to talk about, I think you want to talk about too, is recovery, and we'll talk a little bit about how I recovered during my trip. But I know you're talking a lot about it today, or a lot
Well,
about it recently,
yeah. Well, I would
like
actually
rest and
ask,
recovery.
like, right, jet lag. You can to think about recovery from jet lag and
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel, and not to look back in the past, live in the past of, oh, I wish I
Mm-hmm.
did this
Yeah.
differently. But what are things that you think could have helped you adjust more quickly? So, like recovery from travel and from this time difference.
Mm-hmm. There is an app. And
I didn't ask the app, I asked Alan.
yeah,
I'm
well, the app, the I forget the name of the app already. I'd have to look it up.
it's feeling sassy at 7:30 here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here, what is this? Is this it's a photo of the app.
I know
I
one of one of my friends slash takes some of my nidras, and she's like, every time I travel, I put a nidra on for the last 30 minutes of my
Mm,
flight, and she said it helps me just kind of
interesting.
adjust really quickly, and that's what came to mind when you were saying I was getting 2 hours of sleep, 2 hours of sleep. And what immediately thought, if you can't get the sleep that you want at night, it's like building in these rest practices to help you at least gain that rest during the day when you're supposed to be awake.
Yeah. The 2 hours of sleep thing was not a jet lag thing. That was a we're fucking partying thing. So that was a my issue, not a jet lag issue.
Okay.
Jet lag was piled on top of that.
Yeah.
So there's an app. It's called Time Shifter.
Okay.
And my buddy told me about it. And what it does is you can plan your entire trip through it, and it maps out when you're supposed to have caffeine, when you're supposed to like take a nap, when you're supposed to adjust like lighting, like so like go and get like bright sunlight, right? Like maybe it should be like dimmer lighting, and then it should be like darkness and sleep. And so it gives you these like little tables.
Okay.
And I'm showing it on the screen if you're on video. Right. And what it does is it's essentially trying to get you back to adjust accordingly. It tells you like when you should intake caffeine.
Yeah.
When you shouldn't have caffeine, all this information. And so I think that could have helped. I didn't follow it because so I think what I could have done better when I got home, again, I got home at like 5 p.m. Denver time, and there was an 8-hour time difference.
Yeah.
And my goal, I was exhausted and I was ready to go to bed when I got home, and my goal was stay awake until 9 p.m. And I was like, just stay awake, and then this way hopefully I'll sleep through the night. And that wasn't good enough because at 2:30 in the morning, I went to bed immediately at 9.
Okay.
And then at 2:30 in the morning I was wide awake. Wide awake. And like I woke up and I was like, all right, nope, we're not doing this. We're going to go back to sleep. And I laid there for like 10 minutes. I was like, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
I was like, get your ass up. We're doing laundry. And then that next day, my friend was flying in for a concert. I had a yoga class to teach. So I think one of the things that I could have done better was not plan so much shit.
Yeah.
And a concert, like literally the concert was like 8 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock, and then we're going out afterwards. And right, so if you are gonna plan shit, it's definitely not like party type shit like that.
Yeah, you kind of kept yourself on that time zone because you were like super active and awake when you would be like waking up over there.
Yeah. And then literally had one more day of like recovery and sleep, but then immediately went to Phoenix and was in Phoenix for 2 days. And so when I'm in Phoenix, it's like, I got to see this friend. I got to see that friend. And it was, all right, we're going to meet at the pool hall. We're at the pool hall until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then, let's go to Waffle House. And then, all right, we got to wake up and see these friends. And
wait, Waffle House after the pool house?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds like my nightmare.
Yes. It does sound like your name.
I was like, you met in the morning, right? Like, let's meet up later.
It was in the morning. No, it was in the morning. It was like 2:30 in the morning. Before we went
You're
to
like
sleep.
bringing me back to my New York days. This is stressful.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And so then like the next night was the party, and that was, we were up until 2 in the morning. And my flight was at a 6 a.m. flight, right? Which means you have to be at the airport early. I'm up at 2. That was the night I got an hour and a half sleep.
Yeah.
It was like 2:30 by the time I got to bed, and then my alarm went off at 4. Had to get an Uber to the airport, and then I had to fly home. And then I immediately flew home and had to teach a yoga class. That's why I flew home at 6 a.m. Right? So I'm like this zombie teaching 6 a.m. or not 6 a.m. Like 10:30 a.m. yoga.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I could do is definitely plan better. And this was all, right? Like it's definitely, I own all of it. Is give myself the few days to fall back into following. I definitely think I would use that time shifter app because it definitely helps and helps you schedule and realize what you need, what your body needs. My buddy uses it. He swears by it. Yeah. So being more responsible.
Yeah. It's funny. I was out in Florida I guess I was in Florida for technically like 5 days and then drove from Florida back here. So I was gone in other time zones for over a week. And I was out there and it was interesting because I'm like almost thinking maybe it's better I don't adjust to this. Like it's 2 hours. So it's enough where like, okay, maybe I wake up a little bit later, I go to bed a little bit later. And so I'm staying on my like mountain time zone.
Yep.
The funny thing is over the weekend there was a yoga event that I was at, and the darshans, which are just like spiritual talks, they started at 7 a.m. So that whole like waking up a little later wasn't going to happen. Yeah. I woke up at 6 and then which is 4. But the going to bed late was there. So good on me. And I was like, oh gosh, because we had a hotel room with some friends who I haven't seen in person for 2 years since one of our last in-person trainings, but seen them on Zoom for a lot of different events and things. So, you're in person and you're catching up, and that's what happens is you end up chatting late. And then the days were long. I think one of the days ended at like 9, so it was like start at 7 a.m. and end at 9 p.m. But
that's a long day.
Yeah.
That's a really long day.
But also very restorative, very restful activities, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it wasn't something that felt tiring, because they're all from that very meditative state, that like slow down the brainwave state. Aside from kirtan, which is just like chanting and music for anyone who doesn't know what it is, that we did in the evening, which can be very energizing. But yeah. And then I sat in a car for essentially 4 days.
Why?
I was driving one of my parents' cars.
Oh, okay. So you flew there, did your thing,
and drove a car back. Yeah.
With your parents, or?
I drove solo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that they could split off driving their car.
Fun.
But
that's a long trip.
Yeah.
Florida,
I like sitting
Central Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Central Florida to South Dakota.
But I like sitting. I just feel for people who have to sit all day in their jobs. Like it is more painful on my body than like running.
Yep.
However many miles.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
100%.
Yeah.
We're not meant to sit all day.
Yeah. So that I could feel actually getting back, just even with the time, the limitations of time in driving, because I, like you, was like, I need to be back by this day because I'm going to teach a yoga class the next day. So I didn't have the luxury. Like, it would have been beautiful to just take my time across country. There's a lot I'd love to see on that route because I haven't taken that route cross country. But
I was wondering, like, if you were able to stop, because that's what I would have loved to do, is spend like a week or more, right? Like, because that is a different route than really I've ever even taken, because you're going northwest, right? where when I've ever driven that or been in those areas, it's always like a east to
across.
west type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And most of it's Texas.
I've done, yeah, that's what I did before, was like south to Florida and across.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the route. But no, I didn't really want to sub out 2 weeks of classes because it's new in the area and I just want to be
Yeah.
present,
Yep, for
And
sure.
so yeah, I was like, all right, I got to jam this out. And yeah, if I do it again, there's definitely areas I'd like to see. There's like a Grand Canyon of, I think, Georgia.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that looks kind of cool. And I mean, it's beautiful in its own way. Like, it was so green, driving through those areas, because you go through Georgia and Tennessee, and we stopped just outside of St. Louis because my aunt lives near there. But that stretch leading up to it, I was like, man, it's that time of the year that's just so green and lush. And yeah.
Did you experience a lot of rain driving?
Not a ton of rain, actually, luckily. Just one
That's good.
day had a little bit of light rain.
That's good.
So, which makes it was easy driving, which was really nice. But I felt, so like, the time limitations and training right now for 100-miler is like, I had to choose between yoga or running. Yeah, it's like I woke up in the morning and it's like, what am I gonna use this short period of time that I have? Um, and I needed to get miles in. So my body definitely felt it not doing my morning routine of my variation of yoga. And then as I was like, I gotta get a running.
Yeah. What's interesting is then it's not right, like, this is going to go into more recovery, but right, you go and you get your run in, you're training for 100-miler. So, right, like that's the easy part, right? It's not easy, right? But like that's the easy part is right, like what you have to run to do that, and I'm assuming these are longer distance runs, yeah.
Well, for my trip, I planned it. I did a 32 miles before I left on my trip,
Okay.
knowing that I'd have a cutback week. So knowing that that I could run
Got it.
less miles while I was traveling. One, because pavement is not I don't like running on pavement. It's just not great for the body.
Yep.
So that was one part of it. And then knowing I would have very limited time with all my obligations, and then being on the road. Like, I knew that they were going to be long days. So I was like, I'm going to sneak as many miles in as I can. And
How many?
I look at it as like, it was actually more of a mental training week than anything, because running at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Florida when it's like hot and sweaty, and
That sounds ideal. What are you talking about?
and then my body hurt, like, it's like, okay, I'm sneaking it into one of our 2-hour breaks, right? So it's like, okay, just do like 3 miles, just do 4 miles, do whatever you can to sneak it into one of the breaks during the day. And then on the road, it was, one time I did it in the morning, one time I did it when I landed at a hotel in place of dinner. I was like, all right, I gotta run, so I wasn't doing high mileage, but I was training myself to be like, I just want to just like chill out after driving, or it's so hot out, or pavement sucks, this is gonna be rough on the body, so it's that, like, oh, these things that come up, and it's like, oh, you gotta keep on, because you're gonna feel like crap at some point, multiple times in your race. So
and like the thought of like running and then having to sit in a car, right? Like you're running and then you have to sit in a car for hours on end, driving to wherever it is that you're going, right? So that alone, that's right, like that isn't recovery. Right, like that's probably like the worst thing that you could do, honestly, right? Or one of the worst things you could do is get some mileage in, whether it's 3 or 4 miles or 8 miles, and then you plop your ass on a seat.
But I will say it probably actually helped. It definitely made me feel, I would have probably felt worse just driving. I do think the running, like,
you mean not running?
Yeah. If I had just been driving and I didn't build in those runs, it really helped, like, clear out the stagnant energy, right? Because you're seated and everything's just gathering at the hips. And so the run was like a way to kind of like just disperse, like get that moving. Yeah. And that's kind of, I mean, not only because I needed to get some miles in while I was on the road, but it is a little bit of why I was like, okay, I'm going to go the running route versus typically I would probably choose the yoga route, just to move everything around and stretch things out because you're sitting so still. And I guess, it was a weekend of yoga. So they're coming off of that. I was like, okay, I got to get these runs in. But yeah, it was, and it was when I got my long run in that Saturday after getting back, I was like, well, I can tell I haven't been in my routine. I haven't been, in that morning, routine of my practice and then the miles I typically get in. Like I noticed it. My feet noticed it from not being on trails. Like it's very quickly changes, right? Adapts.
Yep. How far was your run Saturday?
It was just 23 miles, but it was about, I think it was like 6,000 feet of vert.
That's a lot of elevation.
Might have been 5,000 feet of vert. Yeah, 5,000 feet of vert. So yeah, it was a lot of vert.
That's a lot of elevation.
I'm not uphill and it was most of that vert was in the first 5 miles. Oof. So we had like a 500-foot mile, a 300, wow. And then it was coming down, a little bit of rollers. So it was a
good on you.
Vert is I am a downhill and a flat runner. I am my strength.
You know how you get to downhill, right?
What? Yeah,
so
going.
You get to down.
No, or you go downhill into a canyon and you have to climb out of it.
And then you have to climb. Yeah, eventually you have to go up though.
I always think when I'm going. I literally do. When I'm going down, I was like, oh gosh, this means I have to go back up.
Yeah, yes.
But when I'm going up, I'm like, oh yes, I gotta go down.
Yeah.
But it's not everyone. Yeah. So many, I mean, Andy, it's like for him, he loves the uphill. He hates the downhill. And
downhill's rough for me.
Yeah. No, I'm like, I just soar. I'm like, this is lovely.
Yeah, no, for me, it's like trying to like catch myself going downhill. And it's just, it beats up my knees. It beats up my hips.
Yeah.
Especially like steep terrain. It's just that constant like pressure and slamming into the legs, all of it. And yeah. I don't like either. I like flat. I like mall walking.
Yeah.
But so how did you recover then when you were on the road? So like if you had to, right, even just like the little mileage that you did, because my trip, I didn't work out to the levels that I needed to at all. But a lot of my time was spent carrying a pack, moving from place to place, that type of thing. And then walking around cities and my diet was not great, but it was great because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the trip and I ate all the desserts and I had all the meals that I wanted and the Wiener Schnitzel and it was just I didn't hold back.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt the chaos that it created in my body. So like when you're traveling like that and you're running, how are you recovering?
Yeah, I would say for that, like if I were to do it again,
Mm-hmm.
it would potentially be waking up earlier. But I value, like sleep is so important for recovery. And so when I look, that's what I look at is like what are the priorities right now? And I don't cut into like sleep typically takes number one priority. Um,
There are some people that even say like sleep over anything else, like sleep over a
yeah.
workout, sleep over like sleep is critical.
Oh yeah. Well, so in sleep, you go into it, and this is not everyone. People have poor sleep, so some people don't enter into deep sleep states, but they kind of what your body does once it goes into those brainwave states. Like each brainwave state, it does something different, right? And so if you're not going into the deeper brainwave states, you're missing out on like bone regeneration, muscle regeneration, like DHEA is released. There's all these hormones that are, so it's not even just the mental filing and processing that resets, but there's actually like chemical things happening in the body that help you rebuild. And so that is really where, because yoga nidra or a relaxation technique or a guided meditation, or if you're a meditation practitioner, any of those practices that put you into those deeper brainwave states are going to be a catalyst to that regeneration in your body. A big one too is right cortisol, like stress. And I love this example of like if you put a frog in a pot of water and you boil, bring it to a boil, it never jumps out, right? It'll die because that slow incremental building of temperature, it doesn't notice it. And that's what happens with stress, is that we have this slow incremental building of stress, and it's so little, a little at a time, that we don't notice that it's turning into chronic stress. And so what sleep does, so if you go throughout your day, this thing happens, I get this kind of reaction, I get this trigger, I get this stress, fight or and not even fight or flight in the way that we can think of it, but there is that happening, like and then this other thing happens. So say you start the day at like 10% stress, and then boom, this happens, you're at 20%. Boom, this happens, you're at 30%, 40, 50, 60. Let's just say you get up to 70% of your stress load. And then you go to sleep and you have a poor sleep. And now you wake up the next day only regenerated at 40%. So now you're starting your day at a 40% already stressed load.
Deficit, essentially.
And you're building off of that. And so that's that's how chronic stress works, because we know that stress is very important for our body, but we also have to know our allostatic load, which is like how we can handle stress. And that is different from everyone. And your allostatic load, you can work on increasing that, but you won't increase it if you overwhelm it. So if you've gone past your edge, you're not going to build off of it. You're breaking down. And so that with weight training, right? If you went past, you go up right along that edge where there's maybe discomfort, where you're pushing yourself, where it's beyond what you've done before, but you're not to the point of overload where you're injuring your body. And so you kind of you line up on that edge, you work at that edge for a bit, maybe you back off because you've noticed like you're pushing that edge too much, and then that's what continues to increase your load. That's what increases your ability to lift heavier weights, run further distances.
What happens for me, and it's funny because like really works out the way my coach designs these workout programs is we start low, and we, like over like a 6 to 8 week period, it's building up and up and up and up and up. And by the time we get to like week 7, week 8, like we're like, it's hard work. My central nervous system is like, it's like activated, it's engaged. And we get to a point where I can't do anymore. Like it's like, okay, I need to come down. We need to back off. We need, essentially a deload week, because this is just, everything is just firing on all cylinders, and it's been going for too long. And it's wild because it happens almost like clockwork, and it's built in and designed by him. And then, right, we bring it back down, but it's not down nearly as far. And then we work back up into it. And it's this constant like ebb and flow of, because like I'll feel it, like I'll even tell him I feel like crap. I think we need to pull back, and I think an injury is going to happen, or so yeah, what you're describing is absolutely a thing. And when we're there to listen to our bodies, and it's not just about the muscles, it's really like the central nervous system,
autonomic nervous system. Yeah. So our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Yeah. That's what I would say is that it's all encompassing. So think about this. Everyone can think about this. Have you noticed, like, say a week where you've got a lot, got a lot at work, or like pretty stressed out about whatever personal stuff, and how are your training sessions? How do you feel in your training sessions?
They're harder for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
That stress, what happens in stress isn't compartmentalized. Right. So here, like our daily recovery activities are actually going to allow you to train better and harder. That's why your sleep is so important in terms of maximizing your training. Because I know, like I think I mentioned this last time, I've created this breathing protocol mainly focused for endurance athletes, and it's training to nose breathe. And overall, it's just training to slow down your breathing so that you can maximize your effort. But I know when I've had a lot on my plate and I go out for a run, it's much harder to nose breathe than it could be the same run I did a couple weeks ago. It feels differently because my body has been more in this like overdrive, fight or flight, stress mode and then it's breaking down. And so, but we don't see it because our muscles are more tangible, right?
Yep.
These other measurable things are more tangible. And so what this like mysterious thing we can't touch, we don't even sometimes realize is really going on, is just as impactful as like you feeling sore after a hard training day.
Yeah.
So if you're not, and I would say daily, but if you're not implementing recovery activities a few times a week, you're doing yourself a disservice. It will maximize your training efforts because it allows you to show up to your training days with more capacity for stress, right? So if I'm stressed from the week and I'm at 60% and I go into my training day, where's my stress capacity?
Right.
But if I can go into my training day at like 20% stress load, I have that much more
to give
for output, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, I think there's more and more being talked about with our nervous system, but I think it's been really overlooked in the athletic performance field. I think there's a lot more now because there's a lot, people are measuring HRV and they're using HRV to determine what their training should be.
HRV is heart rate variability.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically a measurement of our autonomic nervous system. If there's a lot of variability, it means that you're wavering between sympathetic, parasympathetic. And so if there's not a lot of variability, they say that then you're kind of in a sympathetic dominant, with the exception if you're tapering. If you're tapering, you could be in a parasympathetic dominant, which means there's not a lot of variability because everything's just super chill, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are, hold on, I have two things.
Yeah.
The nervous system, yes, absolutely, I think is very underlooked, as well, I believe, hormones. And I think those, right, definitely tie together, right? Because I think our hormone levels and, right, like our sleep impacts our hormone levels, and it's not just like cortisol or, right, like it's our testosterone levels. It's all the things, like there's all sorts of data coming out now for ice baths and how ice baths help regulate, right, like nervous system as well as hormones. And men are seeing increases in testosterone levels through ice baths. And I think ice baths are an incredible recovery tool, and there's all sorts of data coming out showing it finally. Right, it's no longer like anecdotal evidence. There's, I think even Huberman's talking a lot about cold and heat exposure. So I think there's a lot going on there. But then, what else do you recommend? What activities are you thinking of, or are you doing for yourself?
So I'll give a little background too of like where, like my own journey, because I think I hear a lot, especially with like type A clients and people who are used to, and not even just like the athletic world, like not just like hobby, like, people who are physically active and like to push themselves, but in career driven people, this like archetype isn't exclusive to athletes, but there can be an athlete mentality in business, in life, right? And so I get a lot of people, it's like, well, I just can't, right? We've talked about that. I can't meditate. I'm not good at it, or whatever. I can't, my mind just doesn't slow down. I had someone in the yoga nidra. I just like have a lot of work. Like it just doesn't slow down. And I'm like, you think the first time you like went for a run, you were going to run 10 miles. Again, we talked about you train it. Sure. Yeah. It's not going to slow down right now because you've never done it before. Like,
right.
And, and even if you've done it for years, you're still going to have busy days. Right.
And also there's actually, I read something recently, sorry to cut you off, but I read something recently. I got to see if I could find it again. I think I can actually find it. It's pretty, I think I might remember exactly the source. But they're talking about how people like that, right, are essentially addicted to cortisol, right? They're addicted to that feeling, right? They say no, right? Like they don't want to feel that way. They don't want to, right? And that's how, right? Maybe they don't, but they are, right? Because it's an addicting feeling. It's to always be busy, to always have this thing, right? When cortisol spikes in the brain, it's like that, right? That moment. So I'll have to see if I could find it, and then I can put it in like the show notes. But I think it was the holistic psychologist who talked a bit about our addiction to cortisol levels, and that feeling of, oh, I can't slow down. I can't do that.
Yeah. And I before I did yoga nidra, I was a skeptic. I was like, what? I don't know about this. And I did a seated meditation. Like before I was introduced into yoga nidra, I did seated meditations. So I would just sit, not guided. I would just sit. Which I'm like, gosh, that's so hard. Right. But so when I first got into ultras, I did what they called the Triple Crown of Moab. And it was 3 races, 2 months apart. And you had to do 2 50Ks and a 50 miler to do like the Triple Crown. And since that was my first time doing ultras, I started with the 50K. I wasn't gonna like go
50
for it.
Ks, 36 miles?
32. But
32
it
miles.
can be anywhere from 30 to 32. 33.
Right.
The races range. So it was November, I did a 50K, January a 50K, and then in March I did a 50 miler. And this was when I was living in Colorado, and I started going to this class called Avita Yoga, and it was a bunch of old people and me.
Okay.
But it was all about a lot of it was focused on like joint compression. A lot of it was done. It was kind of like a restorative, but not very therapeutic. And I noticed how much my body felt, like how much better my body felt from implementing that a few times a week into my training. Just in terms of even muscular recovery. And it wasn't until later I can reflect back and be like, oh, and it was nervous system recovery. It was stress recovery, right? Because a prime example is I remember once going out for like a 20 plus mile run and the next day trying to go climbing with my friend, crack climbing at that.
Yeah.
And I had like not a total meltdown, but like, I was like, I can't do this. And it wasn't physical fatigue. I didn't feel sore. It was like mental fatigue from pushing my body and again, the stress. And so then I had all this stress, even though I didn't feel stressed out. It wasn't like, I'm pulling my hair out, like what you think about people when they say stressed out. My body was experiencing states of stress. And then I went out and tried to do this thing where, try to go climbing and push myself there, which is climbing is so mental, right? And so now I'm trying to push myself even more mentally, and it just wasn't there. And that's when I started to looking back on that, put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And so the yoga therapy group classes I teach now are very much like this Avita yoga. It's something that I was like, this is important. This is important, not for just old people, like for all people.
Yes.
But young people don't want to do it because they feel like it's a waste of their time. They want to go do the power yoga class. They want to do and that's fine. But if you are constantly pushing your body, is a power yoga class really what you're needing? I don't have the answer. Depends what you need, what you're going to it for. Yeah. But I would encourage, if you like to push yourself, if you have the athlete archetype in work, in actual activities, like you have to reset yourself or else you will burn out.
Or else you will reset yourself.
Yeah. And it's and it helps with like getting it, not just injury and like muscle and joints and all of that, but it helps you from not getting sick.
Yes.
If you get 100%. Sick, are you able to train? No.
Getting sick is your body communicating to you. It's like, hey, we need to slow down. Hey, we need to, we need a break.
Like think about times that you've gotten like great. Like last year after the hog hunt. Right?
Oh yeah.
It was like no sleep. There was like all these ways that you had been pushing yourself. And it was like, nope.
Yeah. And it was awful. It was terrible. And yeah, absolutely. And I think back to any time that like I get really sick, it's always during a time where I'm just pushing myself beyond where I should absolutely be. And the recovery efforts are lacking. That's the other key thing. It's not that I'm just because I'm all for pushing yourself, but you also need to, you said this in an Instagram post, is like, you need to recover hard too. right? If you're going to work hard, you have to recover hard as well. And I think that's important. And I think taking your recovery seriously
Mm-hmm.
is critical to performing and pushing hard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to push harder, if you want to be better, you have to recover hard. And that's what I love about my strength coach is, right, like I have 2-3 days a week max, right? I lift weights five days a week,
Mm-hmm.
right? I work out 7 days a week, but 2 to 3 of those days is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even said to me, he's like, I do not want you working harder than those 2 to 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And the rest of the time, it's it's accessory lifts and when I'm lifting, and then it's a lot of walking. I still believe walking, and I think I've said this before when we talked about 75 hard. I still think walking is the most underrated exercise that you can do for recovery and for life in general. I think walking, I'm sure I don't have any science to back it up. I'm sure it's out there. But I think walking, getting out in the fresh air, in the sunlight, I think it is hands down the biggest and best thing that anyone can do for lubricating our joints, for moving our muscles, for keeping our tendons and ligaments healthy. I think it's great when you incorporate your family and friends and your dog, right? Because you can then make it a social aspect, because it's not power walking, it's not speed walking. You don't have to be walking up a massive hill. Literally, like getting out. If you're in Colorado, we have tons of open space.
Mm-hmm.
Go walk in an open space. Look at the mountains. Go walk in a dog park. Even if you don't have a dog, go walk in a dog park. Right? Like, I think there's so much power to walking and recovery.
Yeah. And another, well, I guess this would be more like injury prevention, but one thing I really encourage people to, I mean, this is really where I think yoga, this like the why it can be a powerhouse in your routine is mixing up the way that your body is moving. And so like I totally support walking. We are still moving the body in a very and that I think that's what adds to it as a good recovery is you don't have to think about it, right? You can like you said, just take it in, like let it be slow, let it just like soak in. Again, the balancing of the nervous system is where walking can play a really great role in recovery, but also like getting your body and to move in different ways than it typically does in your training. Because again, longevity, that will help you do what you're doing for longer. Now, if you have a competition or you have a race that you're building up for, the week before doing less of that. I don't want to say dynamic movement because that can classify a lot of things, but moving the body in other ways, stretching it in ways that are different from what you usually do, like you scale back there so that your body is actually like tight in a way that can perform for what it needs to perform in. But it 100% will help you again last longer when you incorporate movements or stretches that are atypical to the activity that you do.
Yeah.
And that's where that, like when I started doing that Avita yoga, and the thing is trail running is like there's so much dynamic, like every step is different, so the impact on your body is different. You need the ability to like, you need to move a certain way or else it's gonna tear, right? Like think about people who get tears in their ACL or their Achilles, stuff like that. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
this quick impact in a way that your body's not used to moving.
For sure.
But someone asked me actually yesterday, like, well, what do you, and you kind of asked this, and I gave you the long story of how I got to where I am with like my recovery, or the importance of like recovery activities. But for like my personal experience, and you can try it on for size, but I really like next day you can do it like same day. I typically will do like legs up the wall yoga, which is like a yoga therapy style practice.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because most of our activities we're doing standing, right? So it allows you to also relax more. I was working with someone and I could just tell some of just like the kneeling lunges, the half split, right? Even with props and supportive, like I could tell his muscles were working to keep him balanced.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not able to like relax. But the second we started doing using the wall and everything done predominantly on your back, your muscles can relax. And that's what we want, right? We want to do things where you're not tensing or gripping.
I think you brought up something real quick that you sort of just like glossed over that I think is important, is even on days of activities, like your hard activities, there's still recovery in those days, right? Which is important. It's, days that I lift heavy, I don't just go home and sit on the couch, right? I don't just like lift heavy, destroy, right? Like my body, tear the muscles, and then just go home and sit on the couch, right? It's those moments too that still need recovery. Like you still have them, right? You worked hard, now you have to recover hard in those days too. It's not like you wait till the next day type of thing.
I would say that's most like right after, and it could be 5 minutes of breathing. And Andy Galpin talks a lot about this. He's a exercise doctor of some sort. But he's like 5 minutes of a slow intentional breathing practice after a hard lifting day. We get to like that right there is saying, okay, we can come out of fight or flight mode and we can go into rest and digest. You're signaling, you're saying, hey, okay, versus you come off a hard lifting, you come off a hard run, and then you just go on with your day. You're now like amped up in that mode for the rest of your day. And then there's that compilation of stress, or that compounding of stress that builds off of it, because you didn't say, hey, let me signal I'm okay. Let me signal it's time to like slow down, get everything like chilled out, and then take on your day. So
it's even like in my the way I teach yoga, it's a build up and then a cool down, and it gets pretty intense, and then it gets to the point where like, hey, and I always end with spine manipulation of some sort, because that's where our nervous system is, and it's exactly that. It's saying like, hey, we're good, we did it, we're good, we no longer have to be in that mode.
Yeah,
so I love that.
So yeah, I recommend something same day, and then usually the next day I'll do a nidra, and then also another kind of like walls, like legs up the wall type of yoga. But again, all of my morning yoga practice is in a very meditative state. So this is something daily that I'm allowing my body to go, or my mind, my being to go into a parasympathetic state, or mode. I'm encouraging that relaxed state every single day. So you don't have to do a yoga practice, but find the thing that puts you into a relaxed state. 5 minutes, like I said, taking a few like very slow mindful breaths after a weight workout, after a training session, instead of just like boom going into the next thing of your day. So
Yeah. And then what about food for you?
food.
Mm-hmm.
What about food?
How does food play into your recovery?
I actually like I don't get into the weeds with food and recovery, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um
So I think for me, right, I'm not necessarily like it's just sort of how I just always eat,
mhm.
right? Minus like what you're saying, right? When you talk about, or when I do my eating at like 9 p.m. And then go to bed, right?
That's not good for recovery because you're affecting your sleep.
Yeah, timing for food is important, but I also think that just making sure you're eating whole and nutritious food. So in the last month that I was gone, I essentially gave myself permission to eat whatever and enjoy, right? Enjoy the decadence of what Europe has to offer, right? Swiss chocolate, man, Swiss chocolate. Whew. There is nothing like Swiss chocolate.
Well, and I will tell you this, that's encouraging recovery because you're not stressing about where you're going to find your food, what you're going to eat. You're allowing yourself to be in a relaxed state in your relationship to what you're consuming.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so I enjoyed it. I had all the Cokes. I had I had all the things that I wanted. It was great. It was really nice. But there's a but for sure. I definitely felt, like when you're eating all the Swiss chocolate, when you're when you're having Coca-Cola with your Swiss chocolate, like your body, my body composition didn't change a whole lot. It changed a little, right? Like, and if anyone outside's looking, they're not going to notice. I noticed because of all my body image issues, and but I'm at a point also where I've given myself permission to, put on a little more fat per se, and I'm also liking it. Like, it's okay. But it's also I paid mentally and physically in like how I feel. One of the hard things, I do enjoy a good hearty breakfast, right? Like every morning for breakfast when I'm home, it's 4 to 6 eggs, 2 cups of white rice, maybe some meat in there. Like I eat a really large breakfast. And in Europe, breakfast is a fucking croissant.
Yeah.
And maybe a cup of espresso. And I would order like 3 croissants. And if you have the opportunity to order a croissant in Switzerland with Swiss chocolate in it, I highly recommend it.
That sounds
I
great.
definitely recommend it. Yeah, it was fucking amazing. My mouth's watering thinking about it. Because I've had chocolate croissants before, and they're good. But a chocolate croissant with Swiss chocolate, heaven. I can now die knowing that I have reached pinnacle in chocolate. The pinnacle
of chocolate croissants.
Yeah. But I did, like, I felt, waking up. My sleep wasn't terrible over there. It wasn't like I was just always on the go. Like, I actually got some pretty decent sleep for me, 7-8 hours a night. Like,
nice.
So, but I woke up still like tired, and a lot of it had to do with, I think, what I was eating. Right, like when you're eating fried Wiener Schnitzel in Germany, oh, so good.
Yeah,
so good. But it's fried. It's you're just eating all the goodies that taste great, but my body definitely paid for it, and I definitely felt the effects of it. And coming back here, getting back into a good eating routine, I can already feel, right? Like I've had because even over the last week being home, I've been traveling and still eating like crap. And it's just been the last few days getting back into a good solid diet. And I'm not focused on my body fat. I'm not focused on getting back down to the point that I was at this moment. I'm just focused on eating sort of intuitively, right? Like, right, sort of intuitively, but not like I had some Reese's last night with dinner, right, as my dessert. But it's not Swiss chocolate, one. Two, it wasn't like overindulging, and it was just like a little like topping off of my good wholesome dinner. Whereas, in the past, like I would have been like, no, you can't have the Reese's, you can't, you can't do this, you can't have that, and maybe I'll go back there at some point. It's just not right now, and I just want to feed myself to recover. And I felt your post, like your post hit home, because I was like, yeah, like I need to recover hard. I need to do the things I need. I need more ice baths. I don't think I ice bath enough. I need more, good food.
But I will say with the ice bath, I understand the benefits, but I would say it's not going to be a sympathetic or a parasympathetic activity. So I would separate that from other. No, the whole benefit, right, is like stress, like is getting this.
Why is it not a parasympathetic activity?
Because you're stressing your voluntary discomfort. You're like getting this jolt of stress, and then there's the breathing part that is significant, but it's like more of a stressing of the body. And yeah, that's what I would guess. Yeah,
I'll have to look into that.
But I'm not discrediting it as a insignificant. Like, it definitely I think plays a great role, but I think its significance is in the stress tolerance versus encouraging parasympathetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't talk to that, so you might be right.
Because that's even like hot and cold exposure is the idea of stressing the body in different temperature directions and allowing yourself to. So it would be helpful in like in in expanding your allostatic load, which from a recovery standpoint means that you can load on more and need less to help you come back from it. But
got it.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify it in like on the rest and digest side of it. But I haven't been part of research for it, but that would, yeah.
Because I know there's talk and benefit of like the vagus nerve, and like you want to get up into, like when you get in cold water, you want to be above, like you want your neck in the water, because of specific stimulation of, I forget what, but there's something definitely going on. But I don't know if it's part of the parasympathetic recovery or not.
Well, so I'll ask you this question. When you get into, what happens to your heart rate?
I don't know. I've never watched it, but I assume it goes up.
Yeah. So that will be our big signifier of like what of your autonomic nervous system. But then
you're staying in there. Like I'm staying in there for 5 minutes plus. And the whole point is to be able to just come back and bring everything back to normal in that. And it's like, all right, we're okay. And it's that breath and breathing. And so, and you may be right. You're probably right.
Well, I just when I think about the physiological things that happen in it, I see it as it's helping again, like to feel less stress with stress, right? When we talk about like I know you follow the Stoics and like our voluntary discomfort. The whole idea of that is that something that we stress the body on no longer feels stressful. So we we curate a stressful physiological reaction and then relax ourselves with that.
Yeah.
And that's those benefits there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of it, but I don't want it to be confused with the benefits from doing something that actually um, physiologically will encourage a certain response
For
in the
sure.
system.
For sure.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about that athletic archetype again, and like recovery type yogas, like yin yogas, restorative yogas,
Mm.
because oftentimes people with like that type A personality that oh, I got to do more, I got to go further, I got to go deeper, right? We have to watch ourselves, because I'm part of that.
Mm-hmm.
In let's say a yin class where you're holding, you do a yin yoga class and you're holding poses for 2 to 5 minutes at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're holding these poses, yes, the muscles stretch out, they relax, they expand, right? We start getting into the fascia. People want to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I've seen it where people get injured from restorative yoga, from yin yoga. And it's because they're using it for what it's used for, but then they're going deeper in that moment. And it's right, like you don't have to be aggressive in your relaxation,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like if you're in pigeon pose, you don't have to always go deeper and deeper and deeper as the body starts loosening up. Right? Like let the body do what it's going to do, take in for what it is, and then then the next time when you do it, right, yes, you're going to have that deeper practice. So I think people try to force themselves too much in those moments, because they have that mentality of, oh, I gotta, right, like yes, we want to recover hard, but it goes back to like what you're saying, where we don't want to push ourselves and keep pushing ourselves and adding stress to the body when we're supposed to be recovering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the question I would ask is, um, for someone who is pushing themselves to the point of injury in a yin class, are you truly connected to feeling your body when you're doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you connected to the mind saying, I need to go deeper? And that is your signaling. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a few things, and this is just my own personal experience, like a lot of why I love the I Am Yoga Therapy class is it is about going to your edge, not going past your edge, but it's
Mm-hmm.
very much focused on sensation and feeling and breath so that you can, because sometimes as you're in a pose, your edge actually moves back, not forward. So the
Mm-hmm.
longer you're there, you're actually like, I can't be here anymore. I have to come back. I have to add more support so that my
Yes.
leg is higher up, not more
Mm-hmm.
open. And so staying
Absolutely.
somewhere isn't necessarily an indicator that it loosens and you open more, but it might be that the edge is coming the other direction. The other thing I'll add to that, and this might sound like far off for a lot of people, and this is just my personal experience. When you practice from a place that is, I don't know if I'd say beyond the mind or resting back from the mind, your body will actually do things that is not, you would not think as physically possible without
Mm-hmm.
injury because you're staying in that completely relaxed state. And so in my morning sadhanas at times, when I'm in a very deep meditative state, I'm like, I would not be able to stretch my body this way if I was just doing like your typical yoga practice. Like
Mm-hmm.
my body stretches and opens in ways that I'm like, this is not me. But if I were to think
Yeah.
about it, I contract. And then when I contract,
Yeah.
that's when injury happens. And so
Yeah.
that is another piece of it is like someone might look at me and be like, you're overstretching. But
Mm-hmm.
the internal state that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
allows for that opening. And I'm not doing it because I'm trying to stretch anything. I'm
Yeah.
simply following my inner wisdom and what my body needs. And a lot of times I don't even know what my body needs, but my body knows what I need.
For sure.
So it really is about where are you going, in like what is the driver, right? Who is driving the practice? And so with right, like you're saying, people getting injured in yin.
Yep.
Are you truly relaxing into it, or are you pushing through resistance? Because if you're relaxed into it, you won't overstretch. I will say that. Yeah. But a lot of times, again, and I think there's like, I remember one of my teachers, like for my 200 hour, actually called it sensation junkies. So you're like going to pigeon or you go into full wheel. That's and it's just like, oh, I'm like, love that feeling of like intense sensation in my body, right? Like, give me more of that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where like our overstretching is, because then you're seeking more of that like sensation. So you go deeper and deeper to keep staying with it.
There's that makes me think of, there's this little like cartoon meme thing, and it's like two people talking, and one's type A personality, and one of them's like, don't, you just got to stop and smell the flowers sometimes, and the type A personality is, what are you talking about? I stop and smell the flowers. I'm the fucking best at smelling the flowers. Look, I'm smelling the flowers. They're fucking amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it like makes me think of that like sensation junkie.
Yeah.
Because it's like they, I'm type A, so like I totally do that. And it's just, yeah, it's funny because I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. It's hard to slow down, but it's worth it when you do.
Yeah.
It's worth it when you start to realize the impact, because then you can be even more sensation junkie when you're supposed to be, right? That's the beautiful thing is, right? Like there's a time and place to be a sensation junkie, and when you recover right, I think it allows you to do more of that. It's cool. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I don't. I mean, yeah, I just,
so
I guess the other part is just our society has been so stimulus based now. And so, and that's the other thing that I think, the significance of these like recovery activities, don't be the frog, like you don't even realize, like you're not even going to realize it. So just the more that you can implement daily practices that help your, because it becomes normalized, right?
Yep.
Your normal state of stress is you don't know anything different. So, and I think, I don't know if I talked about this on here, but I remember one time like watching the news, which I don't do. I didn't even have a TV for the longest time, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I could feel it in my body, because that's not my normal state.
Yeah.
And then I think about people who watch the news all the time, all day, and they don't realize the impact that it's having on them, because that is their normal state. And hey, devil's advocate, someone would be like, well, in yoga, shouldn't you not be reactive with like, right? Shouldn't you be able to maintain that meditative state even when watching like horrific things? And it's like, yes. And
yes and no.
And it's like, we can't stop the like, right? We have intake is happening and processing, and then we can start to rewire, right? But it's not like the evenness of mind is not about being apathetic, right? It's not about
100%.
That's not what evenness of mind is.
Right. Buddhist monks don't sit in temples with CNN in the background. Right? Like, yeah, right. Like you have the ability, but like when you can control your environment, that's ideal. right? Why put yourself in those environments if you have the choice, right? And yes, you absolutely feel that difference. Europe, they do not have TVs plastered everywhere with fucking news channels on. It is a different world over there.
Yeah.
It's wild, right? Like we are, I'm not going to get into this, but turn off the fucking TV, people. For real. Stop watching news. Like I go to my gym, my commercial gym that I go to. Like the fucking TVs, MSNBC, CNN, they're just plastered. Like the sound isn't even on. Yeah. I'm just like on the treadmill, just like doing my warm up walk, and I could feel the stress and anxiety. You know, all the bullshit that's being fed and pumped into everyone. Like that's not how we live our lives. It's not. It's not how people in Europe are living their lives. Fucking quit it. For real. It's stressing you out and it's killing you. And yeah, like I feel it and I'm like, fuck this shit. And the whole time when I was in Europe, it took me a good like 2 weeks to realize that. That there isn't this, no one's talking about fucking politics. Like no one's talking, right? Like people think, you know, and this is again for a different episode, but like, you know, people think that Americans think that other people shit on Americans. Nope, not a fucking thing. The only people shitting on Americans are Americans. 100%.
Yeah.
I witnessed it. Right? I fucking witnessed it. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. No, like the French don't shit on Americans. The Germans don't shit on Americans. Americans shit on Americans. And it was so fucking eye-opening. And like, I don't, we'll get into this in a different episode. I'm already getting fired up.
Yeah.
But it was like,
we need a recovery practice right now.
Yeah. Right.
After that rant.
News, just all of it. It's wild. It's wild because the news is, yeah, it's absolutely a big impact into, yeah, there was one day I was at the gym and I almost went and told them, can you turn off the news?
Yeah.
Can you just turn the TVs off? That'd be great. Right? Like you're going to the gym to unplug and then like there's all this garbage right in front of you. It's like being, like when I worked out at gyms in other countries, there's no TVs in these gyms.
Yeah.
Why do we have TVs? Why are we watching CNN in the gym?
Well, here, and again, this would open up a whole nother episode, but here's what I will say. It's like, no wonder we're so dissociated. Like we are doing our activity while our attention is on watching something else.
Yes.
So what happens if you actually, that's like the beauty of yoga, is that like your attention is on your body, on what you are doing in that moment. You are cultivating presence. And so our brains have not evolved fast enough to handle the amount of input it's receiving. But speaking of that, let's decrease the input and increase the chill. My dog is looking at me like, you've been looking at that box for a really long time. And I have some fetch to play.
Can you imagine like what animals are thinking?
Yeah.
Like my dog just is down here now. And
she's like, you've talked to that box for a really long time and hasn't said anything back.
Yeah. Who are you talking to?
And why aren't you talking to me?
Right. Right. Right, because to an animal, like, there's just a box. It's this thing on the desk. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So today I'll share for our breath. This is one that is really great that you can use anytime, but maybe it's something you implement after a hard workout. And it's Chitali breathing or straw breath. And we'll be inhaling through the nose. And then as you exhale, you can imagine that you're blowing through a small straw, but not like making an O shape with your mouth. So you just want to gently part the lips or slightly part the lips and exhale through the nose. So you can do this with the eyes closed, the eyes open, wherever you are, whatever is available. And so just taking a few moments to notice your natural breath. Again, closing the eyes or keeping them in a soft gaze. Just allow a couple natural breaths in and out. And then on your next inhale, breathe in through the nose fully, so expanding the belly and the chest. And then slightly part the lips as you exhale through the mouth. Again, breathing in through the nose. And then a slow, long exhale as if blowing through a small straw. And continue for a few more breaths at your own pace, your own rhythm. Full inhales and slow exhales through slightly parted lips. You can continue with this breath for the remainder of the show if you'd like, for as long as you'd like. Otherwise, release the breathing technique and just take a moment to observe how you feel now. And just notice the impact of the breath on your whole body. And over to Ellen for our journal prompt.
That was interesting. I felt like I was like gasping for air on the exhale. I don't know what that was. Like I would breathe in, and then like I would do that slow exhale out, and it like felt like I couldn't breathe. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting observation.
Yeah. So, no, she's like, walk me.
She barks and then she turns around and looks at me.
Yeah, she's like, what are you doing? So grab your journal. It's funny, I had a friend make a post on social media, and it was like, does anyone journal? And if so, like, how are you journaling? So there's no right way to journal. Right? My journaling looks different throughout the day. Like I journal throughout the day. I have handwritten journals. I also use my phone. I use my phone a lot lately, more so than I would probably like, just because like I love writing, but with traveling the way I've been traveling, having your phone to journal is great. It really is. It's a great tool. So use it, right? Like like we get in these mindsets of, oh, I'm not supposed to be looking at my phone past 9 o'clock. Yeah, we're not. Your phone also has night mode, right? Like so Apple, I assume Android or whoever, Samsung's, right? Like they've built in these things to try to help us, right? Like and yes, we want to limit our exposure to blue lights before going to bed, preferably an hour before going to bed. Right? But like quit like, and like we see this with a lot of things, a lot of topics. Quit like demonizing everything. Right? Oh, social media is bad. Sure, social media is bad. Social media is also really fucking cool because now in my travels and all the friends that I've made, I get to communicate with people all over the fucking world. So social media is pretty fucking cool, right? And using your phone to journal, is it bad? Yes. If I'm looking at my phone at 11 o'clock at night in my bed, I'm trying to go to sleep. Yes. Like you probably shouldn't be doing that. But right? Like keep a pad and pen by your bed. If you have thoughts that come up, right? That's what I like to use. But like, let's quit demonizing all things, right? Like, let's quit saying this is bad and this is good. No, they're all bad. They're all good, right? Like, it's just dependent on how you look at it. Mm-hmm. And that leads me into like, how should you journal? How you should journal is how should you journal? You tell me, right? It's just like, what's the meaning of life? Right? Life is asking you what the meaning of life is. You are supposed to answer that. So how should you journal? Well, what works for you? So grab a pen, grab a paper, grab a pencil, whatever you want, whatever is available in that moment, your phone. If you want a voice note, right? Voice notes are great while you're driving to get thoughts out. That is journaling. That's getting your thoughts out. You can write in very like cryptic sentences, like you can just write words down, right? And as hopefully, like if it's something you want to come back to, you'll understand it, right? Like that's the bad part about writing cryptically or just writing in words. Like you write something down and then you go back to it and you're like, what the fuck was I talking about there? But it's also, right, it's not always about coming back to it, mm-hmm. right? It's just about the process of getting it out, right? Is having these thoughts in our mind and just getting them out, allowing them to flow. If you want to write in full sentences, you want to write in paragraphs, you want to write stories, it doesn't matter. Just journal. You don't have to journal for 5 minutes. You don't have to set a timer. You can, if that works for you, right? If there's no thoughts coming up, then maybe write, hey, there's no thoughts coming up, and then move on. And that's your journaling session. But if there's thoughts about this episode, about what we talked about, recovery, if you have questions, like I love writing questions in my journal. And maybe it's, I never get answers to those questions, or maybe I reflect back on it and over time and see, oh, maybe I now understand that question better. And maybe it leads to more questions. That's what I love about questions, is usually you get more questions from them. But use whatever it is that you have to journal. Write about what you listen to. Write about your thoughts. If you disagree with us, if you agree with us, if you have questions and you want to share with us, great. If you don't want to share with us, also great. We love hearing from people. But this is just an opportunity to take a moment for yourself to just get thoughts out on paper or electronically or whatever. There's no rules. Again, if you want, like I said this in one of our very early episodes, if you want a diary with like a lock and key and right, you want to be a cute little like teenage girl, like fine, do that. Whatever is going to help you do the practice of journaling, do that. And with that,
sweet.
Miss Brie has anything to add?
No.
Awesome.
All
right, it was great talking with you, Brie. We'll be catching up on my trip soon.
Yes. Yeah.
And following episodes, because boy, do I have some stories to share.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's all there.
Awesome. So, I look forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Good talking to you.
Yep. See ya.